Welcome everybody to day last of the M Level 3 P8 project. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to assemble our lid and our U-channel into our final box. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our box has a nice tight fit inside the lid so that we end up with no gap between the front lip and the front of the box. So again, I'm holding it nice and snug. The next thing we want to do is we want to draw a line where we're actually going to cut. Notice how I'm highlighting the ends of the hinge. That's really important. So we're going to put the line all the way across the back edge of our box. You should have a little bit of space there, allowing the line to be drawn. Make sure that front edge is at a reasonable depth as well, probably about 3/4 of an inch, I think is what we're looking for. Notice I'm taking those lines showing the edge of the hinge and I've extended them down. Now what I want to do is come about an 1/8 of an inch below the line that represents the back edge of the hinge. I'm going to put two little marks in there, and what I'm going to do is get my flexible ruler and I'm going to draw a line now between those 2 points, which shows the inside face of where the hinge is. So now what we got to do is we've got to cut that, right? And so we're going to take the lid, we're going to go over to the bandsaw, and we're going to start removing that excess back edge. So I've cut in a little bit, and now you notice I've notched it in where the edge of the hinge is. I cut the line or use the saw to cut down to the bottom line. So this is where the inside edge of the hinge is going to sit. I'm going to come right up to the other mark, stop, back it out, cut that section off, and then I'm going to finish up the rest of that cut. So now I've got where the overlap is going to be, where it's going to hold the hinge pin in. I'm going to go back now to the area that wasn't cut to that bottom line. I'm going to come back and cut back to that notch again. Okay, now I've got a relatively straight line. I want to make sure that that's as straight and perfect as I can. So I want to touch it up just to make sure that that material that's sitting against the back edge of the hinge is super straight and set right to the edges. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect and take that now back to my toolbox. So now when it sits on top, it should sit flush to the back edge and be nice and tight on that hinge, just like it is there. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to drill some holes in there. But to make sure that this is positioned right, we've got to look at where the hinge connects or touches the that cutout. It's got to sit exactly where we want it, because if it doesn't, if we move the lid one way or the other, the lid won't shut properly. So really be accurate in where you're picking those reference points to make sure that that lid is perfectly aligned right to left with the hinge. Once you get it exactly where you want it, we're going to drill some holes in. We're going to put some Clecos in there to lock everything nice and tight. Don't drill any holes in your fingers. Be super careful. Go the other side, pull everything in nice and tight, drill another hole, get a Cleco in there. Okay, probably a good idea at this point. We'll drill one more hole, but let's swap the Clecos to the other side. That way we can make sure that everything is actually lining up the way it's supposed to. Okay, so we're going to put our 3 Clecos back in. We're going to have just a quick look at how the edge fit looks, and it looks really good. Okay, and so what we're going to do, make sure everything's neat and tidy, we're going to drill out the rest of those holes. Okay, and that way we've got spots to put our Cherry Max rivets in. Okay, now we've got the Cherry Max gun in there, and we're going to be using the CR3213-4-2s. We're going to put a number of those in. When we push them in, make sure that head is sitting nice and tight, no head gap, nice and square. Moderate pressure, everything lined up. Pull the trigger, hold the trigger. Okay, there's 3 in. That looks good. Now we'll take our Clecos out because we know the lid is good and solid. Then we're going to put our last 2 -4s in. And when you go through your pile of rivets, you're going to find out that you've got one that's longer. And so what we want you to do is put all of those rivets in first, and then put the longer rivet in, the -4, in last. Listen and feel how the gun pulls. See if you can notice the difference. Now, what we want to do is we want to get the proper amount of grip from that front lip. So what we're going to do is put some tape on there so we can take a mark. Now, what we find works generally pretty good is if you lay the box so it's just touching the edge of the lip, that's probably a good place to start for cutting. So we're going to trim it, I would say maybe just a tiny bit longer than that, just a shade, so that we can actually get it to come over the front of the box and start to lock down. Okay, so we're going to trim that with a pair of aviation snips. Okay, get rid of the tape, have a look at how it fits, and when I fit this one, it was super tight. I had to use a screwdriver to pop it off, so that was too tight. So you can see it's a bit of a fight to get it on. Man, it snapped on super tight and was super tight. So what we want to do now is just trim it back with the grinder until we get it. It should just slide over the front, and we want it to pop on and lock onto the box. So again, I'm just trimming here, get it all, just exactly the right. You may have to come back a couple of times in order to get just the right fit, but don't go crazy. Just a tiny bit at a time, and keep trial fitting it until you get that nice snap, locking the box in position. The other thing I'm going to do is, again, I'm just going to take the corners off so there's no sharp corners. Again, we want it kind of rounded corners and in nice shape, nicely finished. We're going to close the lid. Look at that. Oh, perfect snap. And it's a little bit of a challenge to get open, but not bad at all. So that's what we're looking for. Now, the next step is fitting our U-channel. And what we want to do is we want it to hold our sockets in position. So we'll put our big socket, 9/16 at the top, and our tiniest socket on the bottom. We'll put some tape, we're going to use this as our marking reference, across the bottom of our U-channel. Then we're very carefully going to position that with a bit of an angle so that it's going to sit. You want a tiny bit of space between the edges of the sockets. And then when you take the marks, make them about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. This will allow you to cut the angle into the U-channel so it sits perfectly in the box. Okay, I've got my marks. Get a ruler, view down over the 2 marks. We'll get that very slight angle in the U-channel so it's a nice fit, and we're off to the bandsaw again. Okay, watch your fingers. Very careful. Keep one hand clear there. Make sure you got enough clearance between the support for the bandsaw. And we're going to cut the one edge and cut the other. And so we should end up with a perfect angle to fit inside of our toolbox. Okay, going to pull all that stuff off. Then it's off to the sander. We're going to clean the ends up, make sure all the surfaces are flat and to the dimensions required. So it should be 1 inch high. Round the corners. Make sure everything's all properly sanded and set, and she's going to be ready for installation. Nice. Ready to go. Back at the box. Now we're going to position that exactly where we want it in the box with just a tiny bit of space between the socket and the U-channel, and we're going to hold it and very carefully pick up the hole from below. Again, don't drill through your fingers. Make sure there's some space in there. Okay, and we're going to cleco it in position. We're going to line up for the second hole. Make sure that little U-channel sitting right where you want it. Back drill it up. Okay, and so in order to get a really good grip on the carbon fiber, what we're suggesting is the use of a stainless or a steel washer underneath our countersunk Cherry Max rivet. So we're going to put the Cherry Max in position. We're going to put the washer over top. Hold that washer in position during the pulling process. It won't really grab onto your fingers, but it will pull the Cherry Max nice and solidly into that washer. Here we go again, the second one. In she goes. Make sure you got a good flat head finish. It's all in there. Put your initials. Again, initials should be in the bottom corner. Make sure your edges are all nice and clean and properly rounded, and the fit is right. And you're done. So that assembly shouldn't take that long. And if we can, let's do all of our drilling and sanding in the composite shop.